Welcome to the Super Gamer Podcast. Welcome to the new Super Gamer Podcast, episode 131. Our guest this week is a musician, a multi-instrumentalist, but maybe perhaps best known as the Keytar Kween, a Zeldathon team member. We have Lacey Johnson. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You just performed at San Japan, right?
I did. I literally just got home Sunday, so just a couple days ago.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm sure you're tired.
Yeah, it was good. It was a great show, so I'm happy.
I'm unfamiliar with what that is.
So they are a anime and gaming convention in San Antonio, Texas. It was my first time actually even being in Texas for more than a layover, so that was exciting. But honestly, it was a really great convention. There was incredible cosplay. They had a full free play arcade. And I was fortunate to perform in the jam space hosted by a local band called Bitforce, which is an amazing live band in the video game music scene. And they had a few of us from all over the country perform, which was so cool. I was so honored to be asked. So it was great. I had a great time.
And you've been pretty busy lately, right? Like you're moving around a lot.
I have. I've been in a few states lately. But it's great. I'm very grateful. It's really fun to be out in the world again and meeting people and sharing the insanity that is, video game music and performing live. It's my favorite thing to do. So it's really fun to be able to share it with people. I love it.
Yeah. And one that I don't believe required any actual travel, but very cool. So you were playing Stray on Twitch on your stream. And then suddenly you just looked at your phone and you're like, oh, I got to take this. And then your stream went off for a while. And what ended up happening, you revealed on a subsequent stream, you took a call from Evo and you were given a 48-hour deadline to make a song.
Correct. Yeah.
And I thought the funniest part of all that, you were given a 48-hour deadline and you kept playing Stray.
Yeah. Well, I was like, did that really just happen? Wait, what? Those are like the dream, messages, right? The dream thing that we all fantasize about, like, oh, I'm going to get the call, or like, oh, this is the time when I'm going to get the project. And it was wild because I was literally streaming on Twitch. I was playing Stray. I was dressed up like a cat. Mm-hmm. So clearly I was in the mode to be taking a professional project. I got a message from my friend Mason Lieberman, who is an incredible musician and arranger and composer. And he was like, I have a project for you, but it has to be done within 48 hours. Can you do it? And I was like, sure. Okay. I don't know what this is, but yeah. And then, one thing led to another. And Zaid Tabani reached out to me, who is producing the Evo record. And we literally got that thing done within 24 hours from that stream. So it was nuts. It was absolutely wild. David Gibson McLean is the composer, and he is a genius. And it was so much fun to be able to do something so legit like that. The group text message I was in was insane, completely full of talent. Like some people, I've literally covered their music, and I'm just like messaging with them casually, like, this is fine. It was very cool. I was very humbled to be asked to provide vocals for Granblue Fantasy Versus. That was so freaking cool. So
I went to check it out because you say on your stream, it's still up, go check it out. And I did. And I wasn't really sure what I was looking for because it's a pretty long event.
Yes.
And the second I heard the song, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Lacey. And it's so good. It's like immediately I put it on my Spotify. Like I love that kind of music.
Yeah, I loved it too. No surprise. Very, very fast paced, rock driven, my cup of tea. So it was just like, oh, I was so thrilled to be asked because it was right up my alley in every way. I'm glad you like it too, because I listen to it a lot still.
Did you know, obviously something stood out about the message on your phone? Like, what was it that you were like, oh, this is a big one?
It was funny because I don't ever check my phone when I'm streaming, just because I'm distracted enough as it is with chat and keeping up with housekeeping and making sure my computer isn't crashing, the usual things. And so I see the message from Mason, and I was like, that's weird. He doesn't message me very often. And then I saw a subsequent message, and that's what made me pay attention. And I went, oh my God, whoa, hold on. This is wild. I need to read this carefully. So it was cool.
You mentioned it being, a dream kind of call.
Yeah.
Does this count for your dream of working on a video game?
I think it does.
I agree.
I mean, Evo's it's a big one for me. It was definitely an unexpected achievement that I wasn't counting on at all. And very welcome. But definitely, I'm hoping this is the first of several opportunities within the gaming industry, because I'm also working on writing some stuff too, and I mean, that would be a dream to be able to score a game and or do an original song, or, those are the big leagues. So I'm feeling like I'm kind of working my way into where I want to be, which is very exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Earlier this year, you released a Metroid album called Next Mission. October 2021, you had a Persona 4 album called The Midnight Channel.
Yes.
And beyond that, you obviously have lots of individual songs on YouTube, and you play on Twitch. First question, what was more difficult to do? Create One-Winged Angel, or have to think about Kraid's toenails while making Kraid's lair?
Oh, God. That, One-Winged Angel, for very specific reasons. I was working on a very old computer for that entire project, and that session was massive. That was like an over 100-track session of virtual instruments, recorded instruments, just chock-a-block full, absolutely maxing out my processor to the point where my computer crashed several times trying to even play back my files. Kraid's toenails were pretty disgusting too, but I would say at least I was working on a more modern computer, so I could at least, push the toenails to the side versus when making One-Winged Angel, I had to solo everything, every little group of instrument to make sure things were gelling with each other. But I'm thrilled with the result, but it definitely was one of those that pushed me to my absolute limit to make it happen.
For so much of your content, you're the sole musician, arranger, producer, everything. Have you ever gotten into an argument with yourself?
Often, daily. I did today. I think there's a misconception that when people are the only person on the project that it goes smoothly, or you get to do whatever you want. That's not true. I definitely set very high standards and bars for myself. And I get very frustrated if I can't figure something out. And I think if it were another person, I would show a lot more understanding and empathy if something weren't working, or, we needed to try a different approach. I'm definitely a lot slower to accept if things aren't gelling. I mainly force through and try and make them happen. So I argue with myself constantly, but I do think that a lot of the conversations I have are things I have spoken with collaborators and other musicians before. So it's more so I'm having the dialogue to try and make the best product possible and the best result possible. And I think I could be nicer to myself in the process. But a lot of the time when you have those really fast deadlines or short turnarounds, it's kind of like, well, this has to happen. What am I okay with? Do we need to make a big deal out of it? Do I need to stay up all evening and work on this? Probably not. So I'm getting better about talking myself off the ledge and being like, look, chill. We're going to do this a different way and it'll work out.
Speaking of collaborating with other people, you've said before that one piece of advice you have for people trying to reach out is to be specific in how they want to collaborate.
Yes.
Is that something that you have learned because you reached out and were like vague, or is someone else the culprit here that leads you to say that?
So
you don't have to say who, obviously.
Oh no, I'm not name dropping. Here's the thing. So I was a studio musician for several years before I started doing my own project. So I was used to being told what to do, and oftentimes you don't really have much of a say in a studio environment, especially I was working for major labels. So I had no say whatsoever. I was told what to do. I was given music. I played it. I left. And I think specificity is so important for certain things. If you need, a specific part, like if there is a specific piano part that someone would like for me to play, I would rather they give me either the transcription that they would like for me to play or the specific chords so that we're all on the same page. I think what happens, and I've worked with a lot of people that overplay or deviate a little from the arrangement, and overall it just feels a little messy. And the more people you have involved in any collaborative project, the more inconsistencies you can have. So then it becomes so much work for whoever's editing it. So in my opinion, I've always preferred specificity, to know exactly what someone wants. So that way we can all kind of work together, have good conversation to make that happen, instead of having, 10 different instruments that sound fantastic, but then when they come together, it's a mess. And there have been a few things I've been a part of that really did not work at the end. And it was just like, oh, I wish someone were there to say no, at that point, because it's really easy for that to happen, especially the more prolific and the more interesting the parts are. When they're left to interpretation, can just go a little too far out of the structure. And I'm definitely a fan of having a lot of structure in what I do when I'm just working for myself. And especially with others, I'm incredibly structured, incredibly clean. I make very clean edits because I know when you're layering a bunch of stuff, what a pain it can be to try and rearrange all of that to make it work. So I like specificity, and I like people to be incredibly communicative, because it makes my life and my job so much easier than having to guess what someone wants.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Do you still play with Super Madness?
I don't, no. We parted ways at the beginning of last year, I believe. It was a lot of things. It was mainly the pandemic made things really difficult to be in a band. And I started, having a lot of steam on my solo career, and I just could not juggle everything. So we parted ways on very good terms, honestly. I wish them nothing but the best. I've gone to a few of their shows since, and they're awesome. They're incredible live. If you ever have the opportunity, you should go see them, because they work really, really hard. But yeah, just me, myself, and I now over here.
Well, when they recruited you, Nico, I believe it was Nico, their drummer, said it was so cool how you play a keyboard like a guitar. So I'm wondering, is that what first led to your keytar playing? Were you like, wait a minute?
Yes, it was. It was funny because I've always wanted a keytar since I was in middle school. I saw an 80s movie, and there was a band in the 80s movie, and they played one of the members played a keytar, and I went, oh my God, that's so cool, because I grew up as a classical pianist, so it was never cool to play the keyboards. You kind of just ended up playing the keyboards. And then I couldn't move around, and I couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. And so I've always wanted the keytar, and when I got recruited into Super Madness, it was an opportunity because they already had one keytar player, and I found the Roland Axe Edge, I think through an Instagram ad or something. I went, what on earth is this? This is the coolest keytar I've ever seen. And so I impulse bought it because it made sense for the project. We needed another keytar player, which would be me. And then I could fulfill my little 13-year-old dream. And so it kind of was the beginning of everything. It was the beginning of everything, because from then on out, I started to feel so creative and playing parts that I think a lot of people thought were physically impossible. But with the keytar, it became such a stage spectacle in addition to being so impressive. So it was kind of fun to be able to experiment and to be more creative and flip my head around many times and, just jump into crowds and play. And it was the best. It is the best. I love the keytar. It is my extension of my brain.
When you say that things that seemed impossible weren't anymore, is that are the notes closer together on a keytar, or is it you just had that freedom to move and it became easier?
A little bit of both. I just got another keytar recently where the keys are a little closer together. My Roland is a full scale, so full size keys, full spacing, everything that you would be familiar with if you play a normal keyboard. But I really wasn't used to having synthesizers either. That was very new territory for me. So having the opportunity to have portamento, to have vibrato, to have expression that I'm so used to as a guitar player. Being able to add flair and personality, and then also, movement is a huge part of it too. Being able to actually look people in the eye when I'm playing, it's so exciting and dynamic. And it all just kind of fuels itself. So when I'm inspired, then my playing goes off the rails, and it's just, it's wild, it's alive. The keytar is definitely an instrument that feels very alive to me when I play it.
We have a new one now. I was going to ask, had you officially named your keytar Soul Edge? But now you have a new one, so does it have a name? All
right, so the new one has a working title because I'm still getting to know it. I still need to put a couple hundred more hours into it. But so it's a Korg. The Korg RKS, hold on, what is it? The RK 100S2. That is the one I just got. And the name Korg E kind of stuck. Because I always wanted it. Little background. I always wanted a Corgi, the dog, growing up, but never could have it because we had cats. And so it just kind of has been sticking lately. But we'll see. We'll see. It's very compact. It's red. It's one of those that it's like it could definitely have a more creative name than that. So TBD. But yeah, the Axe Edge is definitely Soul Edge. Someone said that it looked just like it at a show once, and I could never think of it any other way. So,
right. If you could cover any gaming song with Lady Gaga, what would it be?
Oh my God, Bayonetta, hands down. I would do any song from Bayonetta because I know she's a fan of Bayonetta as well. So yeah, that would be insane. I would love to do trading solos, vocals, everything. Probably the Fly Me to the Moon remix from 2. That would be really cool.
So you mentioned growing up as a classical pianist as a kid. Mm-hmm. There seem to be like 3, epiphany is the wrong word, but there's like at least 3 things I've seen you mention about like what kept you going with music and like how you got into VGM and all that. But anyway, so you have a Xanarkand tattoo on your wrist.
Yes.
Because when you were taking piano, you kind of got to a point where you were like, I don't know. But then your music teacher brought in Disney music, which made you go, wait a minute, I can play pop music or whatever. Mm-hmm. You really liked video game music. Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy X you brought in. Your teacher, you've said reluctantly, taught you that.
She was so mad at me. She was like, what is this?
Really?
Yeah. She was like, this is not Russian. Because I went to a very strict Russian teacher. Like, that was my thing. And so I only played Russian composers for a while. And so she was like, I don't know what this is. And I was like, it's fine. Just play it. She's like, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, I understand.
Did she at all warm up ever to the idea?
Not really. She's still, and I know her still to this day. She definitely is she likes what she likes. But she always comments on my Facebook when I like post any sort of live photos or anything. She's like, yay. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm glad she cares still.
Well, I mean, it's cool that really is what like kept you going, so you say.
Yeah.
You were kind of killed on piano until then. But then you also credit Jump Up Superstar from Mario Odyssey as the song that sort of like brought you into the VGM community.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the first attempts that I'd made to actually try a full-scale production on my own. And it's wild. I actually just listened to it recently, and I can't believe how much my style has changed. But regardless, for the time, it was a super successful performing cover for me. I was just doing pop music prior to that because that was all I knew. And so I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed that piece and that song in general. And just, I went, oh my God, this is in a game now? What's going on? Like, this is crazy. So it kind of brought me back in to listen and to look at all of the video game music that was being made currently. I won't say I ever ignored it because I play games every day, but it's interesting how much you can hear and not pay attention. So it was a very big shift for me to kind of change things around, and people actually liked it and they commented and shared it and went, "Oh my God, this is so good." And I went, "Really? Y'all think so? That's cool. All right. Neat. Okay." So, yeah.
Cool. So is classical music just dead to you?
No, not at all. I actually still teach it every single week. I have a couple private piano students that I teach. One of them just went to college too, but it's still it's so different. My relationships changed with it because I went to school for music and I did classical piano all throughout college, and it definitely changed my view of education with it, because all growing up, I did it because I had to. I did not choose to do classical music. I wanted to play, Celine Dion. I wanted to play pop music. I wanted to play Britney Spears. I was like, I want to play it. That's all I'm interested in. And so when you're playing something as dry as classical music, when all you know is, bubblegum pop, it's a little rough. And so like when I started to appreciate it was in college, when we actually would analyze. And I found that I really liked that. And I liked knowing facts about it and patterns and trends and everything. And so I still talk about it all the time when I'm teaching or learning something for myself. You really can appreciate the value of how revolutionary some composers were. I just had a conversation last week about Liszt and Debussy, because a student of mine was playing Liebstrom by Liszt, and then he also was playing Clair de Lune by Debussy. And I had no idea that Liebstrom was 50 years older than Clair de Lune. You would think that they're in the same period of music. And it was a really great indicator of how ahead of the curve Liszt was as a composer. And it's interesting just to think about it in today's world, because there's so many artists that have music that's so abstract or so revolutionary that we don't understand them yet. And I think honestly, because a lot of the time there's nowhere to put them from a classical perspective, we have no period, no classification for them yet. So it's interesting to look backward, because those people have been existing for the entirety of time, and all of music as we know it. And so I find classical music more interesting now than I ever did, because I look at it with such a different lens. And especially as an instrumentalist now and a full-time musician now, I see all of these ideas and experimentation that they were doing, back in the 1850s. It's fascinating to see it. I honestly love classical music now more than I did when I actually played it full-time, which is hilariously ironic, but that's where we're at with that.
Are there any gaming composers you would kind of put in that sort of, maybe they're ahead of their time, maybe we're not ready for them yet?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me think about that.
It's a tough one to answer, because I guess it's kind of underhanded no matter what you say.
Well, I argue both sides too, because it's like, for me, Grant Kirkhope is one of those he has such a unique style. Especially when you look at Banjo-Kazooie and you look at the Rabbids soundtrack. Those are two great examples for me of different eras, if you will, because Banjo-Kazooie was one of my favorite games when I was growing up. Came out in 1997, I think. And then the Mario Rabbids series, which is new for Switch, and he's doing the second one as well. Everything about both of those scores is so Grant Kirkhope. And I love how much he has such a modern style. And even in the 90s, he had a super futuristic kind of modern instrumentation, a modern chord progression. He was never following the same tropes that a lot of other composers did. Not that tropes are bad by any standards. It's just like writing of all kinds. But I think he's one of those composers that always thinks a little bit outside the box. I think Darren Korb from Supergiant, I think he is always ahead of the game.
Yeah, I love Darren Korb.
I love his writing style, and I think he always makes such conscious choices with his instrumentation that he creates a timeless feeling with his music. I think 90% of his scores, you wouldn't know what year they came out in. And we'll see that, with the test of time, how much things stand up over that time. But there's a lot of gaming composers that I think made very timeless work. And I think if anything, this era of remasters and remakes has been so exciting because you get to hear score from 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, in a very modern orchestral style. And I think it's so exciting because for me, Final Fantasy is the love of my life. And to hear this music that previously was only 8-bit or only 16-bit or whatever kind of sound, given this new feeling and this new emotion, is so exciting to me, because there's definitely no limit to what music's going to feel like. And even, whatever the next generation of sound is for games, for music in general, I think there's so many scores that will withstand the test of time and the shifting of genre over that time.
So why is it, if Final Fantasy is, obviously such a huge influence for you, there's no Final Fantasy album?
I did I did a Final Fantasy VII EP.
Oh, you did Limit Break, that's right.
Yes, yeah. So it was all synth rock stuff dedicated to FF7. And honestly, I wish I had a better answer other than I get a little intimidated making Final Fantasy arrangements because it's something I hold very sentimentally close to my heart. I have several things that are half finished that I haven't gone for. But I do want to make a Final Fantasy album. I would love to do a Final Fantasy X album, but I always am looking for the right thing I want to say with whatever my adaptation is or my arrangement. I think I'm getting pretty close to a concept with it, but it's so hard sometimes to change what, in my mind, so many arrangements in Final Fantasy are so perfect, and I just don't have the idea yet that I want to make a new idea with it.
I do like the idea that you're so intimidated by it, and yet of the ones you've done, you've got One Winged Angel and Liberi Fatali, which maybe I don't know about the second one, but it seems difficult to me.
It was hard. They were both very difficult. They were fully orchestrated, and I did not have an orchestra at my disposal. I called upon old part writing education that I had from college to make that happen. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I really swing for the fences, and I don't know why I do that, but it'd be easy to make maybe some other stuff. But yeah, there's definitely Final Fantasy on the horizon this year. I can say that right now.
All right. Is it true? Did you really experience snow for the first time this past January?
I did. So I'm a sheltered little child. I'm from Southern California, and I'm from the part that we don't get any weather whatsoever. We just get heat. So it was really exciting to see snow at MagFest this year in Washington, D.C. I cried. I cried walking out into the snow. I cried watching it from my window. It was just very emotional for me. And I'm sure anyone who'd hear this who has snow in their life would roll their eyes at me like, oh God, really? But it's very exciting for me. I think it's the same kind of feeling people get when they see the ocean or any sort of body of water, things like that. It's the same but colder for me. It just is, it's a very emotional thing. But I loved it. It was really cool to see and to visit. And then go home to like 80 degrees. That's
so crazy to me. I mean, I'm in the middle of Canada, and
I understood,
in 2 months I'll be back in it.
Yep, I know. And it's one of my good friends went to school in Idaho, and she was like, Lacey, this can't be. And I went, I know. And she's like, no, like, how have you never done it? How have you never gone to the mountains or, like an area that has frost or anything? And I'm like, I don't know. I live in my little hole and I don't leave.
Well, you're a big cosplayer, and what it made me think is you've never had the experience of cosplaying and being in a line outside in late October in Winnipeg, and you're like, oh my God, I'm not dressed for this.
Oh my God. Yeah, I could imagine myself finding myself in that situation from my lack of experience with the snow.
There's not much you can do. I mean, unless
Yeah.
I guess you've got a place to put your jacket later. But
Yeah, fair enough.
the number
Fair
definitely, we had a Comic-Con that no longer runs here, but it was every Halloween, and every year
my
you'd show
God.
up and people were just freezing waiting.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Well, it's a rite of passage, so maybe one day.
Someday I'll earn the right. Maybe I'll cosplay at a Super Magfest in the future, and then I can experience that firsthand.
So you cosplay separately from your music, but also the costumes you have in your videos. Like, that's a big deal for you, right? You really try and
Yeah.
get the feel of what you're doing.
Yeah, it kind of helps me get into it too. I love cosplay. It's a hobby of mine, and I do it with a lot of my friends. And it's something that I love to incorporate into my videos when I can, because it just sells the idea so much more to myself as well as the audience. But I love it. I love putting thought into what I'm wearing, kind of creating a character, right? Because every time, to me, if I'm making a visual media, I want it to feel different. I don't want it to just be the same as a listening experience. I want there to be something going on visually that sets it apart. And it's just so fun when I have full-scale ideas that I can actualize. Like the Chun-Li cosplay was a very impulsive, but I was very glad I was able to do it at the last minute. Every bit of my wardrobe has intention with it. And it's fun to be able to think creatively in that way. Everyone kind of has their own signature in their videos, but I'm glad that a long time ago, my boyfriend was the one who said, you can't be another person covering video game music in t-shirt and jeans. I just think you can put in like all the flair you love to do in your spare time and make something fresh. And I'm glad that he said that, because it was true. It was something that I really was passionate about. And I always love the way music videos feel so produced and have a look to them. So I wanted to throw my own spin on that, and cosplay and wardrobe was the way to do it.
What non-musical video game character do you think would play the Keytar?
A non-musical video game character.
Can't be someone who, plays Keytar.
Sure, of course. Yeah, no Freddy Fazbear situation, which I was delighted by that was in the new cutscene for the new Five Nights at Freddy's. But let's see. Who would play the Keytar? I feel like Kirby would play a Keytar.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, because I feel like
might eat the Keytar.
he might, but I would enjoy that as well. So I think
I think Keytar Kirby.
Keytar Kirby is what everyone wants. Let's be honest. So I think Kirby would. I think there's some potential for Samus for obvious reasons. Obvious to me. But I don't know. It would definitely have to be like something with hands.
Okay.
which I know what a specific answer
Mr. Game
that
and
is.
Watch.
Yeah, Mr. Game and Watch could potentially. I don't know. I feel like it's an instrument that requires a little bit of chaotic energy. Not a lot, but a little bit. You have to be a little unhinged to be a Keytar player. And I say that as a Keytar player. You're just a little off the wall, So I think anyone who kind of fits a little bit of an off the wall description. I feel like Solid Snake, potentially, as like the red herring in there. He's like, what? What?
I think he'd stand still the whole time.
Probably. It would be incredible. It would be his thing. Yeah.
Is it annoying when people come up to you and they're like, hey, you know what you should cover?
Yeah. I don't find it. Here's the thing. I don't find it as annoying. It's more, I just don't do it because I'm a very self-motivated person, and I have a document on my phone that's hundreds of songs long of things that I intend to cover. But I always like to hear what people want to see, because in an essence, my YouTube channel is, for people to see it. It's myself, but also, if people are super into a game series, or they're like, oh my God, Lacey, this would be so cool, I'll check it out, because I like to see what people like. And if it resonates with me, then I'll just go full speed ahead and get that thing out. An example of that, honestly, was Guilty Gear, because I haven't played the games yet, I know, but I love the music so much, and a lot of my friends had covered it, and it sounded so cool, and people were like, oh, Lacey, you would fit so well, and like the song Love the Subhuman Self, like it'd be so cool. And so I listened to it, and I was like, that's hard. I don't want to start with that one. And so I found an easier one. And people really loved it. And they were suggesting, songs left and right from the game series for me to check out. So I did. And, that kind of led to a lot of stuff with that. So I'm open to it. I just don't want people to ever expect me to listen because I definitely am on my own little agenda and time schedule. But I always like to hear what people want, because oftentimes if it aligns with what I'm interested or what I want, then I'll do it. I don't mind.
Yeah, and as you pointed out there, and I believe Persona 4 was similar, it seems to be like your introduction to a lot of games. If someone's like, check out this song.
Yeah. Persona 4 is a great story. So Legendav is a wonderful cover artist, friend of mine, Dave, who creates anime covers, J-Rock covers, Persona covers, Undertale. He does a little bit of everything. And he was the one, it's his fault, because he bought me Persona 4 because it came out on Steam, and he was like, you need to play this. I will accept no other options. Like, here you go. And he just sent it to me on Steam, and I went, okay. So I played it and became obsessed with it. And it was literally just, I gave his suggestion a shot, and now we're here, I mean, that's kind of the crazy part of it. So perhaps I should listen to more unsolicited advice, but I feel like a lot of the time, I loved Persona 5, and that was a game I played every single offshoot, every side game, the anime, everything. I was so invested in Persona 5. So I felt like, I was like, well, he knows a lot about Persona. I'll take his word for it. And I'm so glad I did, because Persona 4 is by far and away my favorite Persona game so far. And I have been working on playing through them. And it's just funny how sometimes, that voice, when you listen to the voice, it can lead to things that change your life. And I would say, honestly, Persona 4 changed my life in a lot of ways. I don't think I would be as deep in the VGM community if not for making the record for the Midnight Channel, if not for collaborating with a lot of people I admire on some tracks. And like, it's so cool that one decision can lead to so many big changes. And just thank you, Legendav, for gifting me Persona 4,
You mentioned down the road there's going to be something Final Fantasy related, but anything you can tell us more specifically, what's coming up for Lacey Johnson?
Okay, let's see. So things I can talk about. On YouTube, I have a lot of pretty exciting videos planned for the rest of the year. It's so crazy to think about that we're in like the back part of the year now, but I have some really cool Metroid videos coming out that are shot, and I just have to edit and go back and forth with a collaborator on that. And let's see, I have a couple more Persona songs coming out, not from Persona 3, 4, or 5. So that's exciting. And if you're at Mag West, you already know what a couple of those are. I have a KDA song that I really want to release. That's going to be a very high production value video, and I know it's going to take a few months. So maybe my goal is to get that out by the end of the year. But it's one of my favorite covers I've actually ever done, with my friend Longest Solo Ever. So that will be very exciting. And I already have 2 albums planned for next year. So there's plenty of things happening up the bend for me. But yeah, the best way to kind of stay in tune with my mayhem is just keep it on YouTube, because I do post often about it. And yeah, pretty much any social media, if you're on it, I'm on it. So that's a good way to kind of just see what's up. But yeah.
And that's Lacey Johnson Music on YouTube. That's Lacey. Also Lacey Johnson Music on Twitch and LaceyJohnsonMusic.com. Lacey Johnson, thank you for being here.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you. Thanks for having me.